Hi, I'm Dawn with CoOrganizers Technologies. Welcome to our monthly welcome to our monthly webinar training series. You know it's live, right? Today's session is on leveraging the power of Microsoft Teams. I'm going to, in this session, I'm going to make some assumptions, and that is that you have some experience with Microsoft Teams. And if you're brand new to that, definitely check out some of the videos we have in our YouTube channel. This is going to give you an idea of really how Teams can be such a vital tool in your organizations. It's so much more than chat in meetings. We can think of it really as a portal to our work, and used effectively, Teams can mean that you might have a lot fewer applications open, because it even is an opportunity for you to edit files, be able to communicate, and really manage your projects, where you may spend a lot less time, for instance, in Outlook, and be able to have more valuable conversations. So let's take a look at what we'll be covering. Throughout, you're going to see tips and shortcuts for Microsoft Teams. How can you customize Teams to work for you? What are some ways to manage channels in Teams? Working with files, and then of course getting more from meetings. Next month, we'll dig into and focus on working with applications within Teams, and this is then where we will spend a lot of time looking at anything from our task for planner and to be able to look at interacting with OneNote, with Stream, and much more. So join us as well for next month. But let's go ahead and dive right into Teams in terms of how we can start to use this tool more effectively. Certainly, should you have questions as we continue, drop those into chat so that I can do my best to address that, or make sure that you get some answers that will be helpful for you. So one of the things that is useful in terms of navigating this, very briefly, to the left, we have our rail or our navigation, and you're likely pretty familiar with those options. And if we want to switch between those different choices, for instance, if I want to go to chat, that is Control and 2. And I can see as well in this navigation that I have an unread or a chat that I haven't seen yet. So simply by this indicator, that will be helpful for me. For Teams, that is Control 3. Calendar, Control 4. Calls, if this is enabled in your organization, is Control 5. Files, Control 6. And this is where we can see files that have been added to our channels from any number of different teams. And so this becomes a great way for you to see what's recent rather than necessarily going to each individual channel. And our activity, Control 1. So that takes us to any recent activity that we have as well. Now, these shortcuts are based upon the sequence that we have here from top to bottom. And with that, then, that means that if for some reason you wanted to change this order, calendar would, let's just say that calendar is where you live. I could take that calendar and move it up to the top, and that becomes Control 1 now. So that is another option. So even though we won't do that in this case, that would be one of the tools there. So one of the questions I have is about a list of shortcuts. In just a moment, I will share that with you. And that is one quick way to see a list of keyboard shortcuts is Control and the period. And that is going to show you common keyboard shortcuts. So it's kind of ironic that we have a keyboard shortcut to see keyboard shortcuts. But then this is a way for you to be able to see that. Now, should you want to print that, you can use this link, see shortcuts for all platforms, and that will take you to a Teams website where you can actually access and see those, especially if you have users in your organization that may be on Mac or they want the web version for that. So that is one of the ways for us to get those keyboard shortcuts. Now, another way for us to do that, I can get my mouse to behave here. Another way for us to do that is in an area that we'll talk more about in just a moment, this command box at the top. I can type in here /keys and hit enter. And now I also have that keyboard shortcuts list. So those are both options for you in terms of navigating and some different choices there. So we'll continue to look at some different shortcuts as well throughout our time here in exploring that. But one of the other things that can be helpful for us in terms of customizing is if we're using this as a portal, it can be useful for us to know what the status is. Are people, other team members, are they in Teams? Or maybe they're busy, they're in a meeting. And that is also true for you as well. So for instance, here in my profile, if I come up to this is where I can change that status. Now, currently it shows that I'm available. And that's simply, if I was in a meeting, it would automatically change to busy. But maybe I want to make sure that I'm not going to be disturbed during this important webinar. So in this, I could change this to do not disturb. That means then that not only am I busy, but I won't get notifications unless it's marked as urgent. So there are a variety of different statuses that we can work with and set up for ourselves, and it helps us to understand our other team members as well. So let's go ahead and see what those would be. You're, of course, available, as we saw, indicates that I'm active on Teams, don't have anything on my calendar. Busy, you can actively pick it, but it also is one. As soon as you have something on your calendar, your status changes automatically. So do not disturb is the one that I picked here, where I really want to focus. So this is either when I'm working on a project, for instance, or if you're presenting from your screen. So pass this on as well to your team members, because this is a better one than just busy. If you're presenting from the screen, that means you won't see notifications popping up. So those notifications are things that can happen when someone has, sent you a message in chat, or they've put in what's called an @mention, which we'll talk about. So those things can stop. And I'll show you how you can change your notifications as well in other ways. Be right back. Pretty self-explanatory. It's not something that's set in your system. You set that you set it yourself. Appear away when you need to work without responding right away. Now, offline is a status that would be there if you're not signed into Teams. But you can also pick appear online, so you can be in Teams, but if you simply want to make it clear that you're not available in any way, then you could pick that too. And so these are options that you can, that may be changed for you, but that you could also change as well. So explore those choices for you in your status here, and you have this ability then to change those. So there's another way that we can do that as well. But while I'm here, we also might want to set a status message. So with this, I can put in a message that would display to people if they're posting something to me in chat, or they mention me in a channel conversation. And so it might be, I'm in a webinar until 12 o'clock noon Mountain Time. I'll follow up. And we could continue with something clear with this. So I could say, show this when people message me, and I could clear that maybe after 1 hour, or you can see, you can even have a custom time frame. But that might be something, you know, if that you want to have for a certain amount of hours or even a certain amount of days. Now, the other piece that we have with this is schedule out of office. If you're using Outlook, that's going to give you more flexibility in terms of your out of office, and know that your out of office in Outlook communicates automatically with Teams. And so that is one of the things that is part of the integration in this Microsoft 365 environment that becomes so useful to us. But you can also set up a schedule out of office here if you want to. So it can be handled from both sides. In either case, they're talking to each other, and that would also communicate to other people if you are not available. For right now, I'll choose done. And let's look at a few things here. So one of my teams is the Evergreen project. And I'm simply going to go to the ... So this is an existing team. And in this case, I'm going to manage the team. Now, your options will vary depending upon if you are an owner, a member, or a guest. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But in this case, when I look at manage team, the reason why this can be helpful too is that in chat and in my teams, I can see here availability. So Adele is available, Lynn is offline. And so that becomes another way for me to be able to view and see that status in different ways. And so this would also show up in chat, which can be really helpful. So, you know, mention, for instance, here's Adele. So she sent me a chat, but it's also indicating that she's available. That might mean that, you know, we can hop on a quick call or otherwise view that. Now, in chat here, we have multiple people that are part of this, and we can see that some of them are offline at this time. So that gives us some information. Even if I just hover over here, I can see that Diego is offline. So those are some ways where the status is helpful and where you can also leverage it to your benefit as well. So you get some information and you are sharing information as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about changing the status in some other ways. So let's get back to and look at some other shortcuts that might be helpful for you. The command box, we touched on that briefly. This is also a way for you to be able to search content. So if, for instance, I'm looking for marketing, I could type that in, and we'll notice that we're seeing a number of different things. These could be conversations where I have the word marketing, maybe messages, and even people. So if that is, in this case, that is a title that Alex has, and so that would be helpful there too. And I may even have files with that. And of course, you could get much more specific in terms of what you're searching for, a project number, and things along those lines. But you have these different possibilities. Now, another way for us to leverage and work with this command box is with slash commands. And we saw an example of that. And by the way, notice here as well, if I have marketing here, I hit enter, but it will also bring up, do I have a team that has marketing in the name or files? So in this command box, I can put in a slash command. We saw that with keys. Well, how about slash what's? Now I have to definitely be on the right place on my keyboard, right? So I'm looking for what's new. Okay. And I can just simply hit enter. And this is a way for you to view new features that are in Microsoft Teams. And so that becomes yet another way to access information. Or /files. So that is, here again, another way for us to get some shortcuts to this. Now, maybe we just want to see what those different options are. So let's type a /. I'll come out of this because we're in files, because in files and I could search further. But if I just want to get a list of all of the / commands, this is a quick, easy way. I just type a /. I can see different options, and notice that these include those status options. So maybe I want to change back to I'm now available. And so my status has been changed. And here I have, and notice that it still shows my status message, and I could change that as well. But those are some quick things. Now, a quick, easy way to get up there as well, Control/. I don't even have to click, Control/. So those are some different ways that we can quickly work with and move through, make changes, get information, whether it's a list of shortcuts, it's files, or perhaps changing our status. So definitely take advantage of those shortcuts as well. Now, some other shortcuts too. In the upper left-hand corner, here is our history. And so that means that as you are navigating and moving around Teams, you could then quickly hop to a place that you might have moved to. So for instance, if I want to get back to that conversation here, then I could just pick that from my history. So upper left-hand corner, really handy as a way to quickly move around or return to a place that you have before. Now let's look a little bit about managing teams. So although this certainly isn't the only tool that we have, this is where a lot of our work gets done. So it's likely that you're not going to be creating a lot of new teams. If you're in Teams, a lot of that structure has probably been built for you already. But let's all right, so let's explore then. In this case, I have a number of teams. So it is possible if you needed to create some teams, we also want to be pretty strategic about those. And so that's, we won't get into a lot with that, but too often we have too many teams, and we really want to think in terms of, is it necessary to create a team? Maybe it can just be a channel within a team. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. But here I can see that I could join or create a team as well, if necessary for that. And let's go ahead. Here I have a reminder that is popping up. I'll take care of that. And in this case now, I want to make some changes to the Evergreen project team. I am currently an owner. So let's look at that for a minute. I'll come back to manage team. It's a good idea that you have more than one owner. Now, it might be one of the owners might be someone that's part of your IT support, like CoOrganizers Technologies. But it should also be someone who is a key person within that particular team. So a team is often for a project or for a department, and sometimes we have one that's organization-wide. So owners have the ability to add people, but also remove people. They are able to change the name of a team. They could delete a team. And so it's a very, lots of responsibilities, lots of power within that. And in this case, then I have some people that I'd like to add. So Megan, that's my alias for the day. She is one of the owners. And It's all, as I mentioned, it's always good to have more than one owner, as people may be on leave, or they might actually leave the organization. You want to be able to have that management easily available. So let's go ahead here and add a member. I'm going to add Lydia. And not only will I add her, but I'll also make her an owner. Okay. And I'm also going to add Nestor. And he will just be a member, which is most typical with that. And by the way, if, let's say, for instance, you're an owner and someone is no longer part of that team, if they are an owner, you need to first of all make them a member. So in this case, if I wanted to change this and say, Lynn is a member now, I can do that, and then I would be able to delete her from the team. I can't delete an owner, but I can delete someone from the team once they are just a member. Now, guest is something that may or may not be available to you. That is an external partner. You can add them based upon their email address. And with that, then they will have access to the content. So although they won't have the ability to manage the team like this, they can create channels, they can participate in conversations, they can share files. And so consider that as well. I will share with you how you can do a private channel in case you may have some external guests, maybe it's a consultant or other partner, but there may be still some conversations that you want to limit either from guests or even other people that are part of that team. So we'll look at that in just a moment. Now, because I'm in the management here, I can also see what the other channels are that I have. That's pretty easy from my structure. The general is always going to be a default for every team. And then we also have the design and planning. Now, I could, if I wanted to, come in here and maybe, it looks like I have that picture, but apparently it was something happened. So I'm going to add that picture and I'll save it. And so I can actually use that unless it decides to misbehave. That's okay. But I could also even come in here and edit the team. Maybe I want to call it the LMS project, and I can make other changes to this. So that becomes another option here. I've renamed it. I have an image here, and I could even control other settings within that manage piece. Let's explore a few more things in terms of what's available with Teams. And you can drop into Q&A if there's a specific question that I can be helpful for you or to work with that. That is, one of the things that can be helpful is if you have a lot of teams, there may be teams you do not really participate in. And so how can we change that? Well, one of the things, let's say the Evergreen project is a really important project for us. I could take that project here and drag it maybe to the top of the list. So that makes it easier for me to be able to see that. I also might have teams that I am not part of in any way. And it just seems like I've got too much clutter. There's too much going on here. So I could go to that team, the ... here, and actually, now I could leave the team, but it might be helpful for me. I might still want to see some references there. So I'm going to hide it. That becomes another option for me. So there are different approaches, ... I will hide. Now, the advantage of that is that hidden teams are still accessible. They're at the bottom here. I can expand that to see those teams. But that is one way for us to be able to control some of the communications and the layout. And maybe this Mark 8 project is also important to me. So those are things that I can reorder in terms of working with those. But we can also more effectively take advantage of working with these channels. So let's say, for instance, that I'm in my design channel and I want to start a new conversation. So one of the things that we can take advantage of is something called @mentions. That means that you want to tag a person, or you want to tag a channel, or even the entire team. So to start that, I might say something like @design. You can see these are all the people that are in this team, but I will type in design, the first characters, and now I've created a @mention for design. So I want them to be notified that I've put in this new information, and depending upon the notifications, they would see that then in their activity. Now, let's just say, for instance, that I had a spelling error here and I hit enter, didn't catch the spelling error, and gosh, I'd like to fix it. So a couple things here. First of all, no, you don't have to then reply to that. That's one of the things that is nice about this, that we can edit this message versus having to put in another one like, oops. So here I'll go to I'm hovering over the message. I go to the ... and I can edit. You can edit as many times as you want. You can only edit your own message. But what that will let me do then is that here I can fix this, and maybe I also want to add some things to that conversation. Now, you're probably familiar with some of these, but I could, add an emoji. Okay, I could add GIFs or GIFs, depending upon how you want to say that. I could add stickers. Now, some of these may not be enabled for you. It just depends upon whether those are acceptable and whether or not, well, there we go. Now, these stickers can be customized, so you can add text to them. And this is a relatively new feature. Some people find it silly, but if you've been using Microsoft products for a long time, you might remember good old Clippy, and Clippy is actually back now. So, there's a number of things that we can put in there. We might remember, hey, it looks like you're writing a letter. We could put in completely unimportant, but we have that as an option here. So it is something that where we can edit a message, even if we have issues with, spelling, or we want to add content, or if there's anything else that we might want to do in terms of our messages. Now, the @mentions, that's one of the things too, where people will get notifications, but maybe it's just a regular conversation, doesn't have an @mention. Or how do you control what you see, what you get notified on? So let's look at this. We hover over a channel that we might, want to, maybe this particular one, the research and development, I'm not really involved in that one. So I could go to the ... here. And here you see channel notifications. Channel notifications. So this is a way for you to kind of cut down on some of that information that's coming to you from teams. And that's why some people get a little frustrated with that. So with here, I'm going to turn it off, meaning unless somebody is specifically mentioning me like an @ and then my name, an @ Megan, then I won't get a notification on that as well. So that's one of the things that we have. Now I'm going to take care of this reminder here to dismiss this in working with that. So that's something to also explore on a channel by channel basis. You can control those notifications and work with that. I mentioned before that we could also create private channels. And so let's look at that. Maybe I have something where I'm sharing some financial information or otherwise. And although we could create a separate team for that, it may not really fit in the strategy or the structure that you want in your teams. So I'll go over here to the ... again, and I'm going to add a channel. And the channel here, let's say this is financial projections. Here for privacy, I'm going to change this to private. Now, I can't change an existing channel to private. So know that this has to be a new channel. But when I create this, what happens is that it is now a channel where we control who can see it. And maybe in this case, I want it to be Nestor, and I want this to be Lydia. Now, in adding them, they are the only ones, in addition to me, who will be able to see that channel, see the content, and interact with it. Now, in this case, then, if someone could just be a member, but I might make them an owner of this channel. So I might say, make Nestor an owner of this channel. I am as well because I created it. So the roles can change in a private channel. They have to be members of the team as a whole. So that is one of the requirements, but we can change their role for that specific channel. And now that channel has a little padlock on it. That means that only the people that are part of it will actually have access to that information in working with it. Let's go ahead then and see a few more things when it comes to conversations, and then we'll move into some of our work with files and working with meetings. So when it's a conversation, typically then it's just going to be like a chat. It's just simple one-off, but you may want to have something that's a little bit more involved. And in fact, I think I'll go over to my general channel. Now the general channel gets different interpretations, but most of the time it's the intention, or how most people use it is, it's just that it is only for things that are related to that entire team, and they are more general communications. So if it is something more specific, like sharing reports, that should be a separate channel, not something to put into general. So here I'm going to do a new conversation. Now, a couple things with this conversation. If I have multiple lines to it, or I want to have more control over it, then let's change that to pick format, or we think sometime previously it was compose. And so with this, then that would open it up. Now, the other way for this to happen, I could be in a new conversation and a keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-X. So either way. But now I have the ability here to add a subject. So I could say, welcome Nestor, and to the team. And this here, as you can see, I could make things bold. We could, have bulleted list and have other formatting, So it gives us more flexibility in terms of how we might work with that. Now, in this case, I'll go ahead and send this or work with this, but let's look at something about this particular message. I'm going to go back to it, hover over it, and edit this, because instead of a conversation, we could make this into an announcement. So an announcement stands out a little bit more, and we might not need to be quite that. It's joined. Could even change the colors of this. So this is another way for us to communicate, is to create instead an announcement. Now, with that conversation, then I could simply, once I'm done with that, I'll just go to my checkbox and say I'm done. So that would be one of the options as well. But let's go back to this other message that I have here. I'm going to go to the ... and I want to edit it for just a moment. Okay. And we're going to go into our compose, because over on the far right-hand side, I could mark it as important, mark it as urgent, if this was something that I wanted to make sure people saw. So these are all things that kind of give us different communication. Notice this icon here, that this is important, and that would be another way for us to work with it. So those are just a few things in terms of working with messages. Let's wrap up with a few other key things with messages. And one of these is a kind of a hidden trick. A lot of people don't know about this one, and that is saving messages. So I'm guessing if you're using Teams, you can be overwhelmed by all the different content that's out there. And it may feel that you're not really feeling it's not as streamlined or as helpful because there's so much. Saving messages or bookmarking it might be a solution for you. So let's look at how this works. Let's say, for instance, that I have some, here we've got, I want to save this particular message. Maybe it's much more recent. And this is one that I want to be able to go back to because of some of the conversation that's part of it. Well, I can just hover over it and go to my ... here and look at this, save this message. So I'll click on that, save this message. You'll get a quick little mention here. Don't worry, I'll show you how you can find these. And maybe here's another one, and it doesn't have to be within the same channel or team. It can be all over the place. So it could be, I'll go to the ... save this message. Okay. Maybe I even have a chat that I want to save. So I'm going to hover over this ... Okay, save this message. So they can be chat, it can be in channel, but how do we find these? Where are they? Well, we don't have to remember or know where we put them. A couple ways to find those. I'm going to hover over my status here. Here is saved. So now I see all of my saved or bookmarked messages, and that becomes a quick and easy way for you to view them. And you can then navigate to any one of those as well. So you actually, it takes you right to it. It's a bookmark, just like we would have in our browser. Now, if we change our mind and we no longer need that, we can just click on this to unsave the message. But that is a big time saver. Another way to get to that is with /saved. So that would take us there too. But hopefully that gives you some ideas in terms of how you can effectively then work with this communication. Let's wrap up with a couple other quick ways to make Teams work better for you. If I'm spending a lot of time in this design channel, for instance, I'm going to hover over it, ... and choose pin. So now it's going to be at the very top. That way you're able to customize Teams to make it work for you. The same thing is true for chat. If this is someone, I'm in communication with Adele almost every day, but there might be other messages coming in. So I'll go to my ... and pin. So now anytime I need to go, check in with her, communicate, she's right at the top. I can pin, many other people as well. In addition, in the ... or you can see here, we could pop out that chat, which means you could have that in a separate window, even as you are doing other work. And that can be a handy way for you to also leverage whatever you use most frequently within Teams. So that can be really helpful, especially when you're in a meeting or otherwise working on, other priorities. So we can pin channels, we can pin chat, and we even can come to, and here we have a group chat, more than one person. So I'll hover over this little pencil and I can actually name that. So maybe this is my executive team and I can save that. So that's just a label I'm giving it. Other people wouldn't see that, but that is another way for us to customize Teams so it really works well for us. And those are some of the different tools that you have where you can really focus in on the chat, the channels that are important to you. You can, hide or not give importance to others as well in terms of working with that. But what about files? This is one of the key reasons why many people will use Teams, because it can be a way for us to access and work with our files without having to go externally to the applications, because we can actually edit them right in the application, right in Teams. So let's look here. Here I have a number of files. Now these files could have been uploaded. They might have been shared as an attachment in a conversation, but in any case, they're all here. These are all related to this design channel. They've been shared in this way. Now there's different ways that I can manage them so that they will, we can work with them a little bit more effectively. But we do want to share, however, that one of the things to keep in mind here, when we create teams and we create channels, they're all building a structure in SharePoint, which is why these files then, instead of having them be in a lot of different places on the network, these files can also be a centralized place because it's on SharePoint. So if I go to the ... here, I have options where I could open it in a browser. I could open it in the app. That means think of the desktop application like Excel, but I could even edit it directly in Teams. So depending upon what I want to do with it, if I just want to view it more than anything, then maybe I'm just going to edit in Teams. And that would be a way for me to see that file. So that would be one way for me to do that. Now I'm going to go back using my history, but another way I might give that more importance, or that I could work with it. If I move to this file, I'll go to the ... and what I want to do is pin it to the top. And maybe I want to add another file. I'll go to new, and this happens to be just another, this is a PowerPoint presentation. Actually, I don't want to create a new file. I want to upload an existing one. Okay. And here I have this PowerPoint presentation. I'd like to share it with my team. I like to have it be available here. That way we can all edit it and view it. And so I've uploaded that, but I'd also ... Here, I'm going to pin it to the top as well. So this is a way to give priority to the files that we might be working with most often. We can even go further. Here I have usability priorities. This is a file in a tab. So this means that I can actually open that file, view it in Teams, and that can be an even easier way for me to work with it. I could edit it. I could even open it in the desktop app, or I may just want to be able to see that. Maybe this is just so I can refer to it. Now here I have my files again. I can go to the ... here. Okay, and I could say, make this a tab. Make this a tab. Oh, got some sort of issue with that. That's okay. Let's see if we can do that with the other one. Okay, so I will, well, we are just, that's okay. I'll go to the plus here. We'll pick something else. This is how we can pick an application if we wanted to. We're going to talk more about that. So that is another way for us to create a tab, is for an application. And let's go ahead then and try one more time. I have this particular file here. Let's say that we'll take a marketing initiatives ... make this a tab. And we're seeing to have a little bit of an issue here. Yep. So not sure what happened to Teams, unfortunately, but we have the ability to add files as tabs so that those are more easily, so we can work with those a little bit more easily as well. So that becomes an option for us as well. Now, keep in mind, if we have we could also do that as well if we have this private channel. So with that, then I could go right to files, and maybe what I want to do is upload, an important financial statements, for instance, that only this channel or these folks would have. So that would be another option for it. Now, let's look at another tool. Here I have a message from Outlook, and it has some attachments. Now there's a lot of different ways that I could work with those attachments. I'm just going to size this to make it a little bit easier for you to see. Here I have this attachment, so I could save it out. It might be out to SharePoint or network, but I'm just going to take this one, drag it right into my files. So that becomes yet another way for us to work with it. We'll talk more about, next month, we'll talk more about tips with working with Outlook and Teams when we explore different applications. What are some different ways to work with it? But that certainly is a quick little way for us to work with it. I guess I just want to try this one more time, see if this would work. Yeah, so we're just having some connection issues with Teams. All right. But it becomes, we can make a tab out of that. We're able to share files. We have a lot of flexibility in terms of how we edit them as well. That's one of the reasons why Teams can be a real portal for you, a place where you have, you can view your work and the shared files instead of having it be this lengthy email chain that people can get lost in or that you can't get out of, for instance. So hopefully, you've got some, already have seen some tips about how you can customize Teams, how you can work with files, how you can add people with that, some of the communication that's available. And we'll certainly talk next month about different applications like polls. We're working with forms, and even how we can even work with some of the video, for instance. And video is one of the things that can be created when we're doing a meeting. So let's look a little bit about our meeting options. So meetings could be a one-off. Meetings could just be a quick meeting that you have that, with just between two people, if I wanted to connect with Adele and we just wanted to talk about something, or it could be something that I have scheduled. And so for instance, let's look at this particular meeting here. I'm going to join that one in just a moment. I could even chat with the participants, but I also have a meeting coming up tomorrow. And let's look at that one for a minute. I'll open that up. Maybe I want to edit that one. I need to make some changes. Maybe there's someone new I want to add to it. There's other details that I have. You can see all of the different possibilities here. Files that I might provide for it, meeting notes, attendance. So these features have been expanded over time. So attendance information not available because people haven't RSVP'd yet, but that's okay. Those are some of the things that we have in terms of working with it. So we also can go to the ... This is where we can see once a meeting has been created, you can go to details and then go to the ... and see meeting options. And by the way, you have response options here. So if you create it through Outlook, that's where the RSVP will go. That's often why a lot of people will do it that way. If you create it in Teams, you also have these response options. So choose what makes sense for you in terms of working with it. Here I'll go to the meeting options. And right now this opens it into a separate browser window. And this is something that might change over time. But at this point, we can change meeting options before the meeting, as well as once the meeting started. But Megan is the meeting organizer. So this is one of the things that can be really helpful. First of all, who can bypass the lobby? Who's able, who do we want to admit and who can just come in? Now, depending upon who we've invited, maybe everyone can bypass the lobby. Announce when callers join or leave. Good one to turn that off. Who can present? This is a helpful one as well. This way you don't have, this determines who can screen share, who's able to have access to it. And it's all up to what is important or makes sense for that meeting. Allow the mic and camera for the attendees. You can change these things ahead of time. Do you want it to record automatically? Maybe that's another setting that you want. Do we allow meeting chat? Do we allow reactions? So these are all different things that we can set up for that meeting. And in this case, then I'll save it. But what that does, and we'll close this window, now I've changed it for that meeting. So you can come in ahead of time and make changes to this meeting. Now I'll close this one and let's start another meeting. And here I have a meeting that I need to get started. And one of the things to know as well is that rolling out this spring and summer, it just depends upon how soon the feature might come to you. Teams finally lets us add co-organizers. That means that the organizer doesn't have to always be the one to start the meeting. And that gives us a lot more flexibility in terms of how we work with it. So let's go ahead and join this meeting. And I have someone else that's going to join that meeting too. So give me one moment for that. Because Adele is also going to join this meeting. So I want to make sure that she can come in and be part of this meeting. So she's going to join the meeting. Okay, so notice here's the notifications. So Adele has started the meeting. Okay, I want to, and you're probably very familiar with these things. So here we can change, look at our camera, whether or not that's on. Do we want to change our background filters? What are the options there? And currently I have blur. I could pick a lot of other choices here, or I might just decide that I don't need to have any of those things, and I'll simply remove that altogether. So that would be one of my options, certainly, and confirming my audio, and I'm going to join as well. So now Adele and I are in this meeting together. It was set to automatically record, so that recording is going on. And in the ... this is also where we have meeting options. And so even if you haven't changed those, or you want to change them after the fact or while the meeting is going on, you can do that. So this is another way for us to find that. You can also, of course, make other modifications like the device settings, in terms of maybe switch audio. And if we had a lot of people in our meeting, so right now, if you have, right now it's a 7x7 gallery, so you can actually get a large gallery. And if you, and so that becomes, actually a large gallery is, if you have, right now we would have, if we have more than just a regular gallery, that's no more than 9 people. So if more than 9 people are on video, then that becomes a large gallery. And you may be familiar as well with the together mode, which is artificial intelligence that kind of puts people into different seats and working with it. So a couple keyboard shortcuts that are helpful when you're in a meeting. If you want to turn the camera on or off, that's Control-Shift-O. And you want to turn the mute, Control-Shift-M for the microphone. You also have breakout rooms. And so for instance, and we have reactions. I also could come over to Adele, for instance, and with her, I not only can see the information here, but I could actually spotlight her. And that means that everyone would see her video at the top. And so that can be a helpful one as well. Breakout rooms, another feature that we can either set up to automatically move people into different rooms, or we can assign them manually. So a couple quick things here. Know that there is an attendee list, and I'll show you next month what that looks like, but an attendance list, that is because of the participants or the people. So we could download this when we're in a meeting, ... Here we could download the attendance list, but the attendance list and the recording will take place either in chat, or if the meeting has been set up to occur in a channel, that's where you would see that. So know that those are some different options as well. Another thing to keep in mind too is that if you are one of the organizers, or if you want to say, okay, we're done with this meeting, make sure that you don't just leave. Instead, make sure that you end the meeting, because otherwise the recording can keep going until everyone's left the meeting. And so if you want to say, okay, we're done, then, and you want to finish the recording and bring everyone out of that meeting, then make sure that you choose end meeting versus leave. So that's only available to the organizers, but that's one of the things that's helpful and good for you to know as you're working with the meeting. So a couple keyboard shortcuts, definitely take advantage of the attendance list and others. So those are some ways for you to make the most of working with the meetings feature. So let's, just in case, just for you to see here, this is what it looks like when we have a larger gallery. This is our together mode, which you may be familiar with. different options for different scenes, and this continues to evolve, and even for smaller group meetings. So that gives us another possibilities as well. We are going to continue our conversation with teams and specifically focusing on time-saving applications. So everything from how we record, how we add applications, how we manage tasks, how we can do polls, and others as well. So hope you will join us then in June, because we offer these CoOrganizers technology webinars once a month, typically on the second Tuesday of each month. Our one in July will be the third Tuesday, and that is where we start our look at, in Microsoft Excel, getting started with macros, and then that will continue in August. So I hope you'll join us again for this training series. When we finish, as we wrap up here in just a moment, you'll see a survey pop up. Please take a moment to provide your feedback, your input, so that we can really be of help to you and provide valuable training. I'm Dawn with CoOrganizers Technologies. This today has been our look at tips and techniques to leverage Microsoft Teams. How can we help you to be more productive? Please reach out to us for IT services and consulting to support you with Microsoft Technologies. Thanks for joining us today.